a real stressful point right now in our lives, and this could happen to anybody. So just be aware, please be aware. Do not give any information, credit card numbers, your social security, your birth date, anything. Guys, with that, let's go ahead and get started. Sharon Rose Hayward has written a fantastic book. It's called Winning at Work. It comes in the paperback journal also as an ebook, but it has a journal that comes with it. And we're going to be talking a lot about this today. And I just finished the book this morning, and I got to tell you, I'm a highlighter and I'm a self-help book person. So this was really right up my alley. If you go through this book, you see that I've marked and highlighted all through the book because there's so many relevant points in the book. So we'll be talking about all those through the day. Sharon, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Sharon, you're not a formally trained author, are you?
Not formally trained like college, but I've gone to writing camps and things like that. I love to write, so I like to express myself.
Yeah, you do very, very well. When you started writing this book, did you kind of have the book in mind when you began? Did you have a general idea what the book was going to be about, or did you have a title, or did it kind of come to you as you wrote?
That's an interesting question because I didn't have a title. I just knew what I wanted to share with people, and I had taken all the experience that I had from the past, women that I'd worked with, and it's not just for women, as we've talked about, but that was really what launched me, is working with women who had never really asked for what they wanted. And I talk about how it's our cultural conditioning. So we're brought up to say, oh, thank you. Oh, we don't want to make a fuss. We want to use our manners and be polite. And yet, we really want a lot more. So if somebody gets a raise and it's, say 3%, or, what the company has asked, budgeted for, and they say thank you. And deep down they're like, how am I going to make 3% stretch over my bills? And I was wanting more, but we don't say. So things like that. And just a lot of experiences like that, working with women who just didn't even understand their value. And I started writing because I wanted to share that.
Now you've written this book particularly focused at women in the workplace. As we were talking before the show, I feel like this book was written for me. We talked about marginalized communities, and so many times people who, and I'm just going to say marginalized communities, tend to expect less. So they, we look and we find out all of a sudden that they were paid $3 an hour less than their peers, or their raises are significantly less than someone else's raise, and most of them don't ever find out. But the fact of the matter is that so many times we women and people tend to receive or ask for a lot less than they have or they deserve. And as I read through that, and you had a bunch of things that women say, oh, it's too much to ask for. Oh, I don't want to put them out. I feel, and it's almost like saying, because I'm a woman, I don't deserve as much as a man. And when you put that out, oh my gosh, it hit me like a bombshell. I mean, and it was just like, she's right. We go through life and we don't ask for what we are capable of, or we don't ask ourselves what we're capable of. We don't ask our employer what we deserve, and so many times we underestimate the person we look at in the mirror.
That's so true. And I'll say, as women, so if I said to a friend of mine, or to you, to another woman, or to anybody, well, I didn't get that promotion because I don't have the right equipment, you would know exactly what I meant, right? I mean, without being vulgar.
Yes.
So but that's what we accept. And so let's say this is all true. Let's say there are women who don't get ahead, and let's say there are women who aren't chosen because they so-called don't have the right equipment. And I talk in the book about the Equal Pay Day that I found out about just a couple years ago. Well, it's a myth that inequality has gone away. I've heard that from a lot of people. Oh, that was years ago that men and women didn't make the same amount. Well, now they do. I'm like, well, no, they don't. When I found out about the payday, the equal pay day, which for 2022, it was 15. Well, it was so March 15th. So that's it takes March 15th. So that's a full year of 2021 plus an additional 2.5 months for women to earn the same thing that a man earned in 12 months in 2021. So it is getting better. That's good. And for women of color, the numbers are even worse. It could even go into like September if you look it up every year. So anyway, so busting that myth. Okay, myth busted. And let's say that women don't ask for what they want. Let's just say all this is true because it is true. But so what? That's the past. And that it doesn't, if we decide that, okay, I have some power and I'm going to learn how to really own my capabilities, my skills, my excellence, my talent, all of that stuff that I tell myself, I do all this work, I'm so good, why doesn't somebody notice? Okay, so I'm going to say, I'm going to notice and I'm going to do something about it. And who cares what all that other stuff is? Who cares that I'm not a man? I'm just going to start doing it, and that's what the book is about. To be able to, for example, you may not be looking for a new job, but can you look at your resume honestly and say, my resume reflects every single thing I know I'm capable of? Or do we even feel comfortable of saying, I'm capable of these things? So let's get comfortable. Let's look in the mirror and practice saying to ourselves, the reason that you want to give me this job, or the reason that I am the perfect person for this job is because of this, this, this. And feel comfortable saying that. Because I'll tell you, as a person who's interviewed so many different people, women mostly, it's just so few who say, and this is the job I want, and I think I'm good because of these reasons.
Hey, talk a little bit about your background before we get too far into the book. Tell me about your background.
Oh, my background. So I've always been in office jobs, for example, and I started out really, as you'll see in the book, I started out kind of at what I thought was a deficit. I'd grown up, I lived in a group home, I was a ward of the state, I had like no assets, and so I was able to get a job. And even in my first job, my first real office job, and I was so excited, I had no clue what to do. So I didn't really know that, so let's say you have all these sick days and you see other people coming in late. That didn't mean that was okay for me, but I did it. I pushed all the buttons, and I called in sick if I didn't want to be there. I was late because I saw other people being late, and I thought, oh, I can do it too. Instead of saying, well, these are the ways that you want to act, Sharon. This is how the kind of employee you want to be if you want to, keep your job, for one thing. And but I learned those lessons, and I was written up. I almost got fired, but I learned, and I said, this is meaningful to me. I want a different kind of life. And I want to be able to buy a house. I want to be able to do these things. And so I just kind of worked my way up, and I kept asking for more. And when I found out that I could, and then I would just kind of take what I call in my mind big leaps, And how you talk about enjoying self-help and self-growth. And once I discovered other mentors, or they were mentors to me. I didn't really know anybody like that around. And so I started reading things like that, and I thought, wow, I am capable of so much more. And so that's also partly why I wanted to write this book, is because there were people there for me, and I thought, well, maybe this could be a tool that's going to be the perfect thing for somebody, especially women.
Very cool.
But not just women.
Yes, that's the other thing is the more I read into this book, the more I felt like this was applicable to me. I've been retired for going on my 4th year now, so I don't, I haven't had any experience in the workplace. But I mean, as I read this book, I kept thinking to myself, man, if I had this book when I was 20, just to give you one example, is when you were working for a large amount of money and you decided to go in and ask for a huge, mind-boggling amount to me of money,
Me too.
I thought to myself, why didn't I ever ask for that? Well, I guess, from my perspective, it was a little different because I had been in corporate America to a degree, and I had felt that I was never going to get ahead. I mean, I maybe it was self-limiting, but I could see I went and asked for mentorship, and I went to my manager, went to my supervisor, I went to other supervisors, and at the company I worked for, and no one said they would mentor me, you know? And so I was very frustrated, and I got that real negative attitude, and I just discovered that commission sales would be the best way to give myself the money that I wanted. And so I left the traditional workplace, went into commission sales, and I was able to fulfill that dream of that six-figure income, and I was able to really, instead of asking a manager, I asked it of myself, and as I read it, I was just delving into my own experiences and how I related to it, and it is so important that we see more value in ourselves than we're seeing. I don't know if that makes sense. We don't.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, we really don't see who we are or what we're worth or what our value is many times.
We're not told that we have that value, for one thing. That's our cultural conditioning. And also, it's a case of, at least it was for me, and what I see with a lot of people, is that if we think, oh, I'm just going to work really hard and they're going to see. Well, maybe that was probably from a movie I saw or something, like just prove yourself and you'll get singled out and they'll recognize you or whatever. Mm-hmm. Well, what happens with me and what happens with a lot of people is you work so hard and you're doing a really great job. And instead of somebody coming and saying, hey, you know what, Sharon, you're just working so hard, I noticed this, and so we want to give you this extra money. It's like, no, we want to give you this extra work because we know that you'll do it and that you can do it. And you're a team player, right? And I think, oh yeah, of course I'm a team player. Because it's like a magic word, it's kind of like, like you're a team player, right? Like, oh yeah, I am. I'll do whatever you want. So, not any more money, just more work. And sometimes it's because, somebody else is overwhelmed and they need some help. So I think, well, okay, I'll do that for them too. And pretty soon I'm doing a lot and I'm thinking, okay, I might be working on the weekend. I might be working late. Well, there's no team around me. It's me. I'm the last car in the parking lot. And it's just dumb, but I've done it. I've done it so many times and expected different results. And you know what they say, it's the definition of insanity.
Insanity, yes, absolutely. Man, I tell you, it seems like the information that you put in here was almost put here specifically for me. I mean, every page, I had my highlighter in hand and they, right at the beginning of the first couple of pages, and they said, women, they look around and saw others getting promoted, and it was usually men. And what a hard-hitting statement that was, yet so obvious, They felt the squeeze of small cost of living pay increase each year and didn't recognize didn't feel recognized for their contributions. And what you're saying is so true, because even though someone may be working their tail off, there's really no one that's saying, man, look at Sharon go, look what a good, what a dedicated employee is. They're saying, how can I get more out of her? And when you finish with an empty bin of work, they add more work to that bin.
So true. So true. I think it's important too, as we grow up, as we get away from when we were young and we really thought about what we wanted. I mean, when I was little, I wanted everything. And I would just say to my mom, I want a swimming pool or, whatever. That was my big thing, I remember. I wanted a swimming pool. And, but we forget what we want. So that's one of the exercises in the book, is just start thinking about everything you want. Literally take your journal, like your notebook, or if you've got the companion journal, then take that and just start writing down everything you want. And now write down what some of your talents and skills are, and start owning it.
Yes.
And figure out, for instance, and I think there's a chapter, should I stay or should I go?
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's applicable in a relationship, in a situation, in a job. If you make a list of everything that's important to you in a job, and then kind of rate that on, okay, if money is the most important thing, am I getting paid what I want? If vacation time is the most important thing, or flexibility, or be able to work at home, or an office, anything, and then how does that all stack up? Or do it in a relationship too. And then I have
The tangibles and intangibles.
yeah, you see, where do I stack up? You know, and it's not perfect. So if it's, let's say it's like 85%, and there's some things that you think, well, this could be better, this could be different, well, then go talk to your manager. Yes. Have you ever just sat down and said, you know what would really make me happy? Because I know when people came to me and they said, what I really want is, and I was always surprised, like, oh, really? That's what you want? Yeah. Well, let's do it. Let's get you the extra class, or let's, you know, give you an extra afternoon at home or day at home. This was before COVID. So usually people just have no clue what you want. You know, so we have to say what it is.
Yes, we have to verbalize, we have to express it. In that should I stay or should I go, you told a story of, I think her name was Carol, and she experienced looking at a resume of someone who had left the company, or not a resume, an Indeed job posting, and this said an outrageous amount of money, and she was ready to quit, and she decided to just cool down and talk to her boss a few weeks later and told him all her frustrations. And the next day he comes and gives her a $5 raise, you know, and it was really just a wow moment for me. I mean, it really was like, you know what, I wonder how many opportunities I've walked away from because I didn't have the patience to stay there and talk to a boss, you know. I love how you say, be ready to walk, you know, and I can relate so much to that. I mean, I worked 14 years for the utility company. I was making huge benefits, huge pay, you know, all the vacation and all the 401k and company stocks. I walked in and quit, you know, I walked in and walked out, man, and I never regretted it, you know. When you can't see your value, you will compromise yourself. And you'll give up so much of your value because you're afraid to speak up. And you know, that book, the book just opened my eyes to that, and how many times I didn't, you know, and I mean, I could have done so much more effective communications through the years, and so that was really revelatory for me. You mentioned the exercises at the end of each chapter. I want to just throw this in, guys. The paper book comes with an optional journal, and this journal is so useful. And if you look at the journal, it's exactly laid out as the book. Every chapter, you know, if you look at it, this has introduction, begin at the beginning, the interview, money, the offer, the new job, create good habits. And as you go through, it corresponds with the chapter, and it's coordinated in a way that you can use the information you read about in the book and apply it to your career. Did you just, I mean, this is profoundly simple, and yet it's just so profound. You know, just, I think it's so important for us to look at ourselves and to evaluate what we are, what we have to offer, and it's, if you don't take a step back and look at it, you sometimes will go through life and never see it. And so,
that's really true. The journal, I wanted to have a separate journal so that people could not just see the exercises in the book, because it's so easy just to go past those and think, well, I'll come back and do those later, or yeah, I know that, yeah, I already know that.
Yes.
So yeah, sure, get your own notebook and do that, but I wanted the journal to also have extra, either stories or other things that would be relevant. And I also think that in most of the time, how we do anything is how we do everything. And so if we are holding ourselves back at work and maybe not asking for what we want, or we asked for something and then we were told no, and so we take it personally, like, oh, so-and-so doesn't like me, or I'm never gonna, you know, it must have been something I said, something like that, you know? And do we do that with our family? Or do we do that in a relationship? Or do we do that at church? Or in the community? Do we bring that same habit of response to everything? Because we are who we are. And that's another thing that I think is so important, is if people can go through read the book, do the journal exercises, and then just start applying it. And really, I want it to be in a way that you can do a little bit at a time.
Mm-hmm.
It is a fast read, but you can do a little bit, apply it, do a little bit more, apply it, and then it's not work and life, it's life.
Mm-hmm.
And within life is work.
Yes.
And all these other things that we have in our lives. And so we bring that person who now feels a little bit more confident in expressing what we want and remembering what our dreams were,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing our value. We bring that everywhere we go,
Mm-hmm.
into our family, and we model it for our children, especially our girls. And we just take that kind of like slightly upgraded, more valuable feeling person everywhere, to the grocery store, ask for what we want.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just like walk away and think, oh, it's, I just don't think I can get it.
Mm-hmm.
Because we'll start getting more and more. It's amazing. I think it's almost like, it's like crazy magic. The more you ask for what you want and become accustomed to getting what you want, then you just keep seeing more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you talk about that in the book. Ask for a sample of what your food is you're going to get, or little simple things that you can ask for out of life. And it's like, this is so profound. I remember being at a Chinese restaurant, and I thought, man, I love these chopsticks. I love these chopsticks. And so the waiter came and I said, hey, can I have a pair of these? And he goes, yeah, hands me a pair. Comes and brings me a brand new pair, and it's like, wow, that's a small thing, but life is like that. And sometimes, so many times we go through without asking. We ask little of life, and life is glad to give us what we ask. And so it just really brought home that point for me. And I've been a reader all my life too, and just going through and listening to all of the books that you recommended and all of the authors, and you have a quote at the beginning of every chapter, and throughout the book there's a lot of quotes, and they're so useful and so applicable.
I love quotes.
Yeah, me too.
You can tell, right?
Yeah, I felt very comfortable with that. I'm a quote freak too. I just love them. Like I say, every time I turned the page, it was something new and something, like right here, it says, I'm here to tell you that we have accepted it. And by accepting this situation, we have perpetuated it. And so we are responsible for much of the negative or positive that happens to us. It's really all in our hands. And so, man, what an eye-opener. I mean, what simple details, but useful information.
That create, promote, allow, which can be really uncomfortable for people to, think, oh, I've created this situation, or I've promoted it in my life, or I've just allowed it.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be a really uncomfortable realization to
Mm-hmm.
know. But once we accept that, then, and I'm not talking about cancer or abuse or anything like that, except that often some of our health issues are related to things that we have created, promoted, or allowed in our lives,
Mm-hmm.
or relationships, staying in a dysfunctional relationship. I've done it. I just kept going back. I had a situation, I don't think I put that in the book, but I had a situation, I went back 9 times
Mm-hmm.
to this person
Mm-hmm.
because I thought, well, maybe it'll be different this time,
Mm-hmm.
because the person says, oh, I love you, I want you, I
Mhm.
need you. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, I got exactly what I expected, but I really knew deep down I was going to get. So I was allowing that, I was promoting it by going back and creating it really just because I was in the situation. I was not looking for other opportunities. I wasn't just saying I'm fine on my own,
Yep. I've seen it happen so many times. You know what I call it? The familiarity syndrome. We become so familiar, even if it's abusive, we accept it, and we almost lay down in that bed and get comfortable in it. And it's like, even though we know it's toxic, whether it's a work environment or a relationship or whatever the case may be, or a personal habit, we know that alcohol is killing us, but we keep taking another shot, and for me, I've had some real epiphanies in the past few months, and I've just completely quit drinking, because I was never a big drinker. I was never a drunk, especially not a stupid drunk, but I know that the alcohol is lowering my frequency. I know that it's a neurotoxin. I know that it's destructive to my body. I know it's destructive to my mind and my spirit. And so I had to make that conclusion that this is something that's going to separate. It's not going to be a part of my life anymore. And it went back to that familiarity. I was just so used to, coming home and having a beer. And so it's just really...
Yeah, the frog in the pot.
Frog in the pot. We talked extensively about that last night. I call it cooked in the squat, yes. So the story is, if you put a frog in a pot of cold water, it'll just lay there. It won't. I'm sorry. You start out with throwing a frog in a pot of hot water, and the frog jumps out. But if you put that frog in that cold water, that frog will sit there and relax, and pretty soon it'll say, "Oh, this feels nice and warm." And next thing you know, he's boiled in the pot, And so many times in our workplace, we get cooked in that squat.
We don't jump out.
We don't jump out.
Yeah, but all the stories we tell ourselves.
Oh, stories.
I just think of all the stories I've told myself in the past. Everyone relies on me. How could I let people down? Well, one, I was letting myself down too. I was probably letting my family down, but gosh, I sure wasn't going to let my employer down, even though they weren't really doing the best thing for me. So. And there's good employers, there's bad employers. And I will say one thing, and excuse me, in the case of Carla in the book, where she had seen the Indeed posting.
Oh, Carla.
The employers don't say, at least the ones I've had worked with a lot, they don't just say, hey, let's make sure that everybody's salary is the same as what we're going to bring in a new person for. It's so rare. It's just so rare. And so it just happens that pretty soon life goes on, time goes on, and you end up saying, oh, if we're going to hire somebody, this is the going wage, and so we need to offer this much more to get a new person in. Well, that's why it's also so important for us to know our own value and know what our value is in not just the workplace, but the work environment, and know, like that situation I explained, where I went out and just said, okay, this is the amount that I want. And it was more money than I'd ever made in my entire life. I mean, it was, when I was starting out, that was probably like 4 times the amount I'd ever made in a year. And I just thought, well, what the heck? I'm just going to try it. And I got it. Yeah. So I was just so shocked.
They called an offer $5,000 less, and you said, no, you turned it down. I'm not. Why are they going to lose me over that $5,000? They called you back and offered you the job.
Yeah. It was all, I don't want to go around and be insulted, but if I was a person who felt insulted, I would have thought, wait, what? Why bargain down like that? But anyway, I was really excited. But it gave me a whole new perspective to know what's possible. That's really the bottom line of that.
Yeah, that had to be an eye-opener for you. Hey folks, if you're just joining us, you are watching KUHS The Stream on Melody Drive. This is the Weekend Boost. I'm your host, Paul Lane. We are talking to one of my personal heroes, Sharon Rose Hayward, the author of the book Winning at Work, A Practical Guide to Career Success. One of the things that you said that was really impactful for me was how we are sometimes ashamed to talk about our job or our income or our benefits or anything to our family and friends, because we know sometimes some of them are not always rooting for us. But it's an interesting concept. I remember growing up, and of all my siblings, I was the one who always had the house that I put a lot of work into, and I was always the one who had a big house, and I look back on it, and I always felt a sense of, even call it shame. Because I didn't want to rub it in, or I didn't want to make them feel that I was, better, because I wasn't. I never felt that way, but it was always very, unspoken, I guess. I don't know. So that was just an interesting, revelation for me.
Right, and that's another way we'll kind of hold ourselves back too, is there's a really interesting book that I read, The Big Leap, I think it is, by Gay Hendricks. And he talks about what are the things that hold you back? Is it because you don't want to do better than, a lot of us have some kind of like, we hold ourselves back. We don't want to do better than our parents, or we think that, oh, we're bragging if we do this or that. Or I've seen people in families, one will say, well, you've got everything and I've got nothing. And then the person is like, well, maybe I shouldn't keep trying because look, it's making this family member so unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of ways we can hold ourselves back, honestly.
Oh, man.
But that shouldn't be one.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and there was a section in the book where you talk about excuses we make for our, for failure, or excuses we make for mediocrity, and it's like, oh my gosh, I've seen this so many times in my life, through my working career and through even family, and sometimes people will not express themselves as fully or as they don't show their full potential because they're afraid of someone thinking less of them, and it's so weird. It's just a weird dynamic,
Right, it is a weird dynamic, but it doesn't make, it doesn't make sense, but it doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So those are like, really, I think, can be deep-rooted, unspoken, silent messages that we grew up in our family, or we grew up hearing at some point, whether it was church or I just remember like growing up just hearing that, about God's will, and if you're meant to have it, you'll have it, and to be grateful, and I am grateful. And I do think if something is meant to happen in my life, it is going to happen. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that I can't ask for more. Mm-hmm. It's like, just be happy with what you have. I remember that too. So mm-hmm. all these things that will keep us, and we'll have them, and I'm not saying anything against the church, don't get me wrong, because the church is full of people who might have some kind of mistaken idea too, and they share that with us. Or it doesn't have to be the church, it could be school, it could be anything that we grow up with these messages that we internalize, and then later, if we start journaling, or we start talking to somebody who has a similar experience, and you say, wow, wasn't that crazy? Mm-hmm. Wasn't it just so crazy that I didn't think I could do this thing? Mm-hmm. Because if I wanted a better job, I felt like I was saying, oh, I'm not grateful for what I have. Mm-hmm. No, two different things.
Yes.
I'm grateful for what I have, and I want a different job. I want to make more money, because Absolutely. With money I can support the community, I can support my family, I can do all these things, and I'm not going to be ashamed about it.
Nope. You know what I call that? Developing an inspirational discontent with things the way they are. And it's like, yes, I do have a great job, but you know what? I have more potential here. There's so much more in me. And instead of saying, well, I better not ask too much of life, you should say, yeah, man, come on, let's pack that bag. I want it all.
Right.
It's so funny for me, because even though I'm retired, I took so much from this book, because I'm kind of at a junction right now where I want to start a healing practice, And when I was, reading the book, and it's so true about the exercises. If you don't write them down, you're not going to write them down. The exercises at the end of each chapter, and and I realized that I have to sit down and I have to write down all the things that I want in this hybrid career that I want to start. I want to know how much money I want to make. I want to know what kind of hours I want to work. How kind of travel do I want to make? What kind of an atmosphere do I want to create? I mean, so many questions came to my mind. So it really jogged a lot of, I think, forgotten dreams in me. So that was a real benefit I got from reading the book. I love that.
Yeah, and that's good visualization too.
Oh yes. Affirmation and visualization.
A lot of the visualization we do is worrying. People will say like, oh, I don't know how to visualize. I've never visualized anything. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, really? You didn't worry that, your kid went out after prom and you thought of every single way things could go wrong and thought it over and over in like vivid detail. That's visualizing.
That's visualizing.
But we can do it the other way, mm-hmm. and visualize the really good things.
Yes, absolutely. And your subconscious mind does not know the difference, and so when you visualize yourself sitting on a boat, or when you visualize yourself standing on top of a proverbial mountain of success, and you see yourself raising your hands, it comes out in your behavior, it comes out in your words, it comes out in your attitudes, and people see it. I used to say, when you can visualize effectively, you have the words "I have what it takes" in letters 10 feet tall, and it's not spoken. It's something that someone sees in you. And I've had times in my life where I've had that, and there's times when I didn't. But it's like this has to be a daily habit, visualizing daily.
Well, I like what you said just a couple minutes ago. I was just reading about, everyone's got their own definition of success, and even the book, it's like career success, and I think my favorite definition of success that I just read was doing everything to your full potential. Mm-hmm. And so once we become more and more aware of our potential, then why wouldn't we? The tree grows as tall as the tree is going to grow. Mm-hmm. It doesn't say, well, I don't know if I should grow this tall.
Yes.
What if I'm so tall and I block out the sun for another tree? No, tree grows tall.
That's right. Or
whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it never stops growing, and we must be like that tree. We must continually be growing. I used to do a lot of motivational speaking, and I would do a little story about the flowers in a field. And what if the roses looked at the daffodils and said, "Oh, they're just so bright and brilliant. I'm not gonna bloom today." And what if the sunflower looked up and said, "Man, I'm so tall. Oh, I can't be tall. I gotta hunch over so I'm not so tall." And so many flowers. And then someone asked me, "What about the dandelions?" I said, "You know what? They're the wonderful medicine. There's so many healing properties in that dandelion, and someone doesn't see the value in it, but look at how wonderful and beautiful it is, And so we need to see our beauty, and we need to see our potential, and if we can't see our potential, then we have to dig deeper within us and find it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we had it when we were small. We knew exactly. Mm-hmm. We knew exactly. If you ask a kid, and we laugh, they're like, "Oh, I want to be an astronaut," or whatever. And we're like, "Oh, ho, ho." Kid doesn't know. Well, kid does know, because some of those kids grow up and they become astronauts.
Yes, I love when you talk about that, and we had those dreams when we were kids, and we forget them, and we don't even realize. I remember, we read through that chapter, and I said I wanted to be a scientist. I just wanted to be a scientist, and mm-hmm. as I've gotten to this point in my life, I've realized that I am a scientist. I'm understanding and learning about frequencies. I'm learning about audio healing and just different frequencies, light frequencies, sound frequencies, Tibetan singing bowls. I've been experimenting with crystals on the Tibetan bowls and getting a different tone with each crystal, and it's like, wow, I really have become a scientist to some degree, and mm-hmm. so, yeah.
There's so much to learn.
Oh, yeah, and I think that we need to really look back at ourselves as children and say, what did I really want, and what have I tucked away, and what's in there that I could pull out, there's much more to us than we really know and see,
mm-hmm.
I'm reminded.
Well, that's like journaling.
Mm-hmm.
Journaling itself is important, I think. Not everyone wants to journal, mm-hmm. but you can get an electronic journal, you could just have a little notebook, it could just be like the old school notebooks, spiral bound or whatever, and just share our thoughts and just kind of dig in a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I've obviously go through the journal of the companion journal to the book, because that is very important too. But journaling is one of the things that I think is just important on a daily basis, even if it's just one word, even if it's just keeping track of what happened. Mm-hmm. And we look back. If we look back and we're looking at our wins, we're looking back and saying, wow, 6 months ago, look where I was, mm-hmm. and we kind of connect those dots. That's how we do it. We keep track of our lives.
Mm-hmm. I have to share with you that every night I go to bed and I do my gratitude, but I do it verbally. I've been doing that for some time, a long time, and I realized that, yeah, you can verbalize it all you want, but until you put it in writing, you can't go back and look at that. You can't go back and really appreciate and evaluate and determine, where am I, where do I want to be. I talk about the 5th point on the compass. This journaling is such a useful tool to find out. I don't care where north, south, east, or west is. Most important, where I am right now. I can't get across the street if I don't know where I'm starting, you know. So yeah, the journaling was great. The gratitude, oh my gosh, you know, I usually talk about gratitude on every show. For me, gratitude is really probably one of the keys to life and one of the most keys to happiness and contentment with life. And you know, for me, I think not having it in the book would have made an incomplete book. So, you know, when I got to the gratitude section, I was really happy. Really, really appreciated that because it meant so much to me because the more gratitude I have, the more I really see how blessed I am. You know, and so it was really cool. You know, there's, like I said, every place I turn, you know, you talk about our performance reviews. You evaluate.
That's a big chapter.
Yes, yes. You evaluate yourself before you do your personal performance evaluation. And, you know, you talked about some companies have this system and, you know, the way you did your own evaluation, you were able to go into the boss and say, hey, here's my performance review of my own self, you know. So it really showed that you are cognizant of your behaviors, you're cognizant of your development and your growth, and it shows the upper echelon within the company that you are a viable candidate for whatever position they're looking to fill.
Right. And most managers, most bosses, whoever, depending on the size of the company that we work in, they kind of have no clue. I mean, they've got their own jobs and they're hoping that they can perform for their own managers. And so we do need to remind them. I'll tell you, I had, you know, wherever I've been and had a number of people reporting to me, if somebody came to me and said, this is everything that I've accomplished and these are the things that I've done this year, these are the things I want to do next year, it was so helpful because I really didn't know. I kind of knew, you know, if somebody doesn't cause trouble, you think, oh, they're doing a good job. If somebody doesn't, like, either break rules or miss their deadlines, and, you know, well, they're doing a good job. I don't, and other managers, they just don't know those details. And so it's twofold. So there's a section in there that talks about make a monthly date with yourself. So you sit down either with your job description or your resume, and you just go through and you familiarize yourself with it, and you're just reminding yourself again, this is what I've done, this is what I do, this is my value, oh, this is a class I just took. And so you continually remind yourself, this is what I bring to the table. And then when you go in, you know, like for your performance review, maybe it's not set up that way, but you say, oh, I also want to talk to you about some of my thoughts, you know, share with you about my own performance review that I did for myself. If this isn't the time, let's schedule another one. And so let's say they just keep putting you off. Then maybe you say to yourself, this might not be the best place for me. I want to be working for an employer who really says, I appreciate this about you, and you're right, this is your value. And that they would accept what you say. And so, yeah, I think I would need another $5,000, or I would be worth this much more.
I remember.
And then I was going to say, you know, sometimes I'll say this one thing about working with women, and this, I think it's also cultural, how we've been conditioned is, you know, if somebody says no to us, it's, you know, like, oh no, well, Sharon must be mad at me, or I take things personally, you know, and that's part of one of the chapters in there, learning to put yourself out there, ask for things, and if somebody says no, okay, get used to hearing no. So if somebody says no, then you don't take it personally. You don't think, oh, is it something I said? Is it, you know, what is it about me? No, it's not. It's not even personal. It's just that it was a no.
Yeah, that's
and that's, yeah.
I learned that in sales is that no is, it's just an answer, you know what? I used to have to get 7 no's to get 3 yeses, you know, and I made a very comfortable living with 7 no's, you know, 7 out of 10 people saying no. So it was so relevant to me to hear that and to understand that no is just a temporary answer, and you are in control of where you go from here. You know, so I have this section that I highlighted. I just want to look at this. The last question I always ask was when you're interviewing an employee, was where the employee wanted to be in 5 years. I love asking young people that. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I challenge you with this question also. Know where you want to be in 5 years, because time goes by so quickly. Goals are achieved a little bit at a time, not all at once. Take your 5-year goal and make a list of everything that happens. You broke it down step by step. So if no one's ever set goals before, they can take this book and use it as a blueprint to be anywhere they want to be at, any level they desire to be at. And I mean that. Here's one that I wanted to speak about. Switching gears a bit, why do women not ask for more? This was so relevant to me. Good manners. We're brought up not to ask for more than we've been given. We have been conditioned to accept what's offered. It's rude to ask for more. We assume that if it were available, the company would have offered it. If it's not offered, we must not deserve it. We do not want to make a fuss. We do not want to cause extra work. The painful emotional risk of a rejection. They might say no. It's rude to talk about money. So many of these things have stopped me from asking for more in positions that I was at. And they're such simple little things to overcome, aren't they?
They really are. They really are. And just the fact that you said it applies to you as well.
Yes.
It's kind of like a human condition. And so
is.
I was really writing based on my experience with women, but I think it's all of us, because nobody has really been taught these things. We've been taught to be polite. When we're brought up, be polite. What do you say? Thank you. What do you say? Please. Thank you.
Yeah, humble humility is a virtue, and it really, I mean, we can still be strong and we can still be powerful and have humility. And we can still be bold in asking for what we want in life. And it's like, there's a poem that says, no matter what I asked of life, life gave me, and I don't remember specifically the poem, but, if I would have just asked a little more, I would have had all I wanted, and the difference is slight, these little things are what give people the slight edge. Kentucky Derby, the winner takes home, $2 million. I don't know. I'm not a big sports fan, but let's just say the winner takes home $2 million, and second place was a hair behind him, photo finish, and he only brought home $100,000. The slight edge.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes, it is. It truly is. And so when you have the slight edge in the workplace, you are not only going to be content in the work that you're doing, but you're going to have fulfilling work, and you're going to have a pay that's in relation to who you really are, what you expect of yourself and your income and your job. So
right.
Yes.
And then, I mean, it's really the ripple effect, Paul, which
Truly.
is, let's say we're happier during the day when we're at work. We're happier when we come home. We're not necessarily arguing about money and, bills, and we don't have enough, and should I get another job, or sorry kid, you can't have that. And it's just nicer. It's just nicer. And so many, I can't even remember, I should look this up, but there's some high percentage of people who get divorced based on money. Just because the financial pressures, the financial arguments and everything else, and all the credit card debt, you just go on and on and on. And you think about how much better your retirement is when you ask for more money, and your 401k and your Social Security, if the time comes, whatever. It's just this huge ripple effect, just drop the stone in and,
yes. Yes.
all the ripples. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
That makes
But
sense.
we have to get used to, we take the baby steps. We have to become familiar with our own value. That's a baby step. And then we practice, and maybe we practice with a friend, and we have somebody we can rely on, or we ask for small things and get used to hearing no, and we do our monthly date and look at our resume and become more familiar with our value. That's what it's all about, because that is really the most important thing. Is we're going to stop blaming. We're not going to start, we're just going to get rid of all that, oh, I'm not a man, or oh, I didn't grow up with this, or well, it's the culture, or Sharon Hayward said there's this equal pay day, so I'm going to make less. Get rid of all that. Those are facts, but those aren't going to affect us.
Yes.
We're just going to say, okay, I'm Sharon Hayward, and I'm going to become familiar with my value, and I'm going to do these things, and I'm going to live to my potential and call it success.
Talk a little bit more about that monthly date, if you would.
The monthly date is really, it's twofold. So it's based really on the resume, and some people call it, I just did a podcast with a woman, and she calls it, well, something different, okay? So not monthly date, but it's really to become familiar with, when I pull out my resume, and not because I'm looking for a job, but I want to say, oh, that's right, this is what I do. This is the greatness that I really bring when I come into an office. This is my inherent value when I walk in the door. And so then I look at it and I say, oh, and then I took these other classes too, and now I have, now I'm certified in such and such, like certified in, let's say, project management. And so I add that, and then I remind myself, okay, this is everything I bring. Because sometimes a day at work can just like, it's like sandpaper, just like makes us feel like we're just like being rubbed raw. And, you know, like somebody says, oh, you didn't do this, or here's some more work for you because we know you can do it. You know, all those things, and we need to remind ourselves that, no, we don't even need to put up with that unless we choose to, because this is our value, and we become familiar with that value. And we just have to remind ourselves every single month, and that way we are, we're totally prepared for performance review. And we're totally prepared anytime we need to talk about anything. You know, you go into a meeting and you already walk in feeling like, you know, A number one, because I know I am.
You absolutely are.
Yeah. Not at the exclusion of other people either. It's not, you know, it's not scarcity. If we can say that we can all be A number one, just think a company that has an employee base where everybody feels like they're A number one, they're fabulous, they're talented, they're skilled, we're going to collaborate, and we're going to come up with all these great ideas, versus a company that says, okay, here's one position and who can get there first. And then people they're not collaborating, they're, you know, keeping valuable information to themselves, and they're trying to, like, you know, get that spot. It's like Mean Girls, and or Mean Boys, I suppose you could say. But be the collaborator of great ideas and know that if nothing's going to run out, there's enough for everybody.
Yes, there is.
That is a great employee. That's a great company.
There's plenty of abundance. You know, one of the things that I really liked that you talked about was quiet time. You know, this morning I got up at 5 o'clock because I mentioned I got my identity stolen earlier this week, and I spent my whole day Thursday at the bank and on the phone, and, you know, clearing out our phones. Oh my gosh, it was just such a, but when I got home, I was so filled with tension and static. I shut the TV off, and we just sat there, and we just, you know, just basically sat in quiet for a little while. And I hadn't gotten to that point in the book yet, but it was like, oh my gosh, that was so nurturing. It was so wonderful. And so this morning, as I read that, I stopped reading and I put the book down just for 20 minutes, and I just sat there. I have a little fountain that I have running, and, you know, I just sat there and I closed my eyes and I listened, and I didn't do a meditation per se, but it was almost the level of meditation, because the peace and the calm that came over me was just wonderful, and I thought it was really a great additional tip on the book.
It's one of the 7 daily habits that I recommend, and I start out recommending just 5 minutes, you know, 5 minutes of silence, and by silence I mean exactly what you did. So if you close your eyes, or I do mine actually when I'm out for my walk, and so I don't have my phone on, I'm not doing anything, I'm not listening to a book, it's just like absolutely no inputs from my brain except nature in this case, or hiking or whatever, and then it just like unleashes your brain to be creative or to get rid of that tension. You know, start out 5 minutes a day, and it can be crazy for your poor brain. Your poor brain is just so used to like reaching for the phone and like, you know, I don't want to be bored, I want to be distracted, and then the brain will start relaxing. You know, I think it's pretty amazing.
It really is. You know, I mean, meditating alone is just, it's such a fulfilling and such a rewarding and energizing experience, you know. And so adding that into your day, I think it really, it's not a big thing to ask of yourself, and high return, very high return. Hey Sharon, if someone's looking to get your book, where can they get it?
Oh, on Amazon. Just go to Amazon, put in Winning at Work, and you'll have the journal. And do you want me to hold up both so that you could see both at the same time? You got both, just like that. Poof.
Yes.
Yep. And so, Winning at Work, you can put in Sharon Rose Hayward, and there will also be a suggestion that most people buy these two together. If you really don't want to get the paperback, there's also the ebook, or get both so you can have when you travel or when you're, waiting in line or whatever. So
you get that. It is available on an ebook, folks. So Winning at Work, a practical guide to career success. If you look up the title Winning at Work, there's quite a few titles. You definitely want to look at Sharon Rose Hayward. But I mean, easy to find, very, very good. Look at this book, pick it up, use it, apply it to your life. Guys, I don't care whatever you're doing. Journaling is, I remember finding a book called The Artist's Way years and years ago, probably 25 years ago. And I started journaling, and after some time I put the journal down and I lost it, and when I moved into where I live now 6 years ago, I came upon that that journal. And oh my gosh, it was such a peek into who I was 25 years ago, and my values and my beliefs and my immaturity, and I was just laid out bare for my own self to see, and it was so cool. So yes, journaling is definitely a benefit, and this journal is a guide that actually gives you practical step-by-step information on how to get where you are from where you want to be. Truly, this book is a winner. I mean it.
Well, I also have a website.
Yes.
SharonRoseHayward.com, and anybody can sign up for email updates. And so when I'm just getting ready to launch the Best Life Yet, which is an online class and 17 weeks, and then also doing different retreats, probably a couple per year. We haven't gotten to that point yet, but new books, anything new and exciting, you'll get an email from SharonRoseHayward.com. So just go ahead and sign up there and get emails, and blogs too when I post a blog.
So guys, there's resources at your fingertips, and this is not just user friendly, but it's very enjoyable. Talk about an easy read, and like I said, for me, I'm a self-help person, and so this book resonated with me, and it was applicable to me, and it was useful to me, and it was a book that, I could put this on the nightstand and I can pick it up and go through it and find practical tips and pointers throughout from page 1 to the last page. Folks, this is a great book. I don't care wherever you are in the world. I know we have a large audience that's all over the world. Ebook, Amazon, get the paperback, get the journal, put it in your collection, and start reading it, guys. It's a worthwhile read. I promise you. You will not be sorry you started reading this, and you'll be glad when you finish, because it's very, very helpful. We're getting down to the end of our time, Sharon, and it just seems like we just started. I'm sorry. Guys, Mr. International, Paul Chavez is going to be coming up here, and we're going to have some good programming going on later today. Just KUHS is just the place to be. It's got good music, good content, good information, and I am just humbled and grateful that you've taken time to be with us today, Sharon. Thank you so much for your time.
I'm so grateful to even be here and to have this chance. Thank you very much.
I always close my show with my statement, everyone's looking for a hero. If you can find one, be one. And Sharon, you are a hero. Thank you. Your works.
I love that. Thank you so much.
They're going to change the world. They're going to change people's lives, and I'm so excited to be a part of it. And thank you for coming on the show, and best to you.
Thank you very much.
All righty.